The next one we'll call up is Nicholas Giordano. He's a professor of economics, of political science, at Suffolk Community College. He's spoken here before. He's spoken at the Whitestone Club, at our club. He's been making the Republican circuit, even the Rockaway Club. He's been, and he has a very inspiring weekly podcast called the PAS Report, P-A-S report. It's filling the background of the vacuum created by the fake news media. It's very inspiring. You'll find the truth. Google the PAS, P-A-S report, and get educated, get inspired. And now we're going to join me in welcoming Professor Nicholas Giordano.
All right. So, I actually did my weekly podcast on this topic. Since I was speaking about it anyway, I figured it would make sense. And just so everyone's aware, one of the things that you need to do is actually read the Democrat Socialists of America Charter, because one of the things they talk about is infiltrating the education system. It is to try and set the tone and the message of the education system. And the reason that this problem has been festering so long is because not enough Republicans or conservatives decided to go into education. They went into the private sector first, got jobs, they wanted to make money, and unfortunately left a void that the left wing has taken over. So what's happened is that you have this leftist ideology that looks at it as if they are the moral arbiters of what is right and wrong. They look at it as they are the virtuous ones, and anyone that disagrees with them is immoral. In fact, they're unhuman, they're subhuman. And so it's led to this, I call it, it's an ideological intolerance against anyone that disagrees with their philosophies. And I break it down into 4 categories. You know, you have academic freedom, you have liberal indoctrination, you have the idea of censorship, and then it devolves itself into this mess called safe spaces. So I'll quickly break down each one of those and what I mean by it. So as professors, we have what's called academic freedom. If you are a tenured professor, you are pretty much protected. So for you Republicans that want to get rid of tenure, no, it's not a good idea. That means they can target me. All right, tenure is what keeps me safe. My union protects me, and it would be very difficult to get me fired because of my ideas or the thoughts or the way I teach courses. And academic freedom is extremely important for professors because it allows us to bring up controversial topics. It allows us to push the envelope, to really begin a dialogue, a conversation in the classroom, to try and build a robust idea that you have to have dialogue in order to get to solutions. If Galileo had academic freedom, he certainly would have been a lot better off, but he didn't. And so academic freedom is important for professors. At the same time, why isn't academic freedom awarded to the students as well? Why is it that when students speak up about how they feel on the issues, on the topics, they're marginalized, they're silenced, they're berated by either professors or other students? And when a professor does it, it's a million times worse because that gives the green light for every other student to try and berate that person. And unfortunately, what's happened is that students don't have the luxury of academic freedom, and so many of them actually remain silent on college campuses. They don't speak up, they don't speak out, because they don't want to be ostracized. And we have this entire mentality. Now, on my campus, it's a little bit better. I teach at a community college. At the community college level, the student body is much more diverse. You actually have real human beings with real problems. Some of them are single parents, some of them are kids taking care of adult parents, some of them are working full-time or part-time, they're paying for it themselves. And so when you have that type of student body, and you start seeing the issues on a day-to-day basis, it changes the atmosphere. So we're still outnumbered overwhelmingly on my campus. There are many liberal professors. But there is a decent number of conservative professors. I'm one of the few that will actually speak out and speak up. But there are some conservative professors as well. And just to make everyone be a little bit more hopeful, in the political science department of my school, out of all full-time political science faculty, it's 100% conservative, because I'm the only one that's full-time. So when you're looking at it, look, we're making strides. We're trying to make strides, small steps at a time. But when we're looking at it, you have to understand that these academic institutions, they engage in groupthink. on the four-year university levels, on many of the major schools, and they don't allow anyone to break into an alternative viewpoint. You know, groupthink is something that discriminates against people that have alternative viewpoints, which ultimately will lead to indoctrination. And that's what a lot of professors do engage in. They want to indoctrinate students. For some of them, it's their true belief, it's their true passion in the politics and policies they have. For other professors, it's more about a power that exists. That I'm the professor, I went to all this schooling, I got my PhD, and I know what's best. I know what's right. And that's not necessarily true. I mean, I readily admit, I'm never going to be the smartest person in the room. I know a hell of a lot about government and politics, both here in the United States and internationally, but I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly open-minded to hear new arguments. I mean, every semester, my students will teach me a thing or two that I wasn't aware of, or maybe I just didn't pay attention to. So I keep that open mind, and I'll argue, you know, if a student takes a conservative point of view, well, then I'm going to take the liberal point of view, and I'm going to push back against it. And the reason I do that is, once again, I want my students not to be silent. I don't want my students to just agree with me with everything I say. I want them to push back against me. I want them to push back against ideas. Why? Because I want them to start making their arguments based on evidence and facts rather than the emotions that drive our politics today. Unfortunately, too many of the professors engage in emotional arguments rather than evidence and fact-based arguments. And I'll give you one example about indoctrination. There is a professor at my school that teaches in the environmental science arena, and he did explain to his students how climate change is settled science, that you cannot dispute it, you cannot ask questions about it, you cannot push back against the idea of climate change, that it's settled, and therefore the whole course is about them talking about how climate change exists and what the United States government needs to do in order to protect the climate. And I sat there, and I have a bunch of students that will come to me and complain every now and then. And I'm listening to them, and that's one of the worst things as professors that we could do, is tell students not to question something. That is the worst thing you could do. Because what does settled really mean? Now, I don't care what anyone believes about climate change or not. To me, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But to say you can't ask questions about it, well, that's extremely disturbing, because where would we be as human beings in science if we didn't ask questions? I mean, how many people are aware that Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein's theories are now being contested? They're being challenged. They may have actually been wrong. And so when we say something is settled, it automatically ends debate. We have professors that will use labels, and student bodies will use labels on people if they dissent. So if you're someone that is pro-life, you believe that life begins at conception, well, then you're labeled as a misogynist, that you hate women, that you want to take women's rights away, that you don't want to let them control their own bodies. And why do they use the word misogynist? Well, that's to shut people up. That's to silence people. If you talk about the truth about slavery, so, you know, when we look at slavery and we look at the K through 12 system, as was brought up, the K through 12 system has become a cesspool. I've spoken about the collapse of education before. But as we look at American history and American government, basically what the K through 12 system does, it focuses on all the negative things that the United States has done throughout history. And it doesn't focus on all the good that it's done. It doesn't focus on the idea that America is the place of liberty, that we developed this concept and we have exported, that we freed millions of people around the world, that we're single-handedly, through our investments in Africa, we cut the AIDS rate, the newly infected AIDS rate, in half. No student I have actually knows that. No student I have knows that we cut the malaria rate in Africa by 2/3. All they hear is constant negativity. They hear that all the founding fathers were racist, that they were all slave owners. They were never told that 2/3 of the founding fathers didn't have slaves. They were never told that there was actually a rigorous debate about slavery. They were never told that in the first draft version of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson spoke about the evils of slavery and how it's going to haunt us for generations to come. And he was right. And so you have the indoctrination that begins in the K through 12 system, that they're hearing all these horrible things that the United States did, that by the time they get to my area, well, of course they're not going to have a good opinion of the United States. Of course they're not going to appreciate the United States, because they've been programmed to believe that we're a horrible country. And that's why 61% of those between the ages of 18 to 24 want to see the First Amendment amended. They want to see the First Amendment changed to start banning not only hate speech, but offensive speech. And see, they become mindless bots. That's unfortunately what happens in the indoctrination camps, because if you're going to ban offensive speech, they never ask the question, well, who determines what's offensive and what's not? And that's a big problem, because the ones that are in power, like on the university campuses, they're going to be the ones that determine. They want to change vocabulary words. You know, nationalism today, according to the left, is a bad thing. Nationalism is racist. It's ethnocentric. It's xenophobic. Yet the truth is that nationalism is based on the nation state, and it's based on the countries. Well, which is the nation state? Okay, it's based on the nation state. And nationalism isn't about, especially in the United States, it's not about race. It's not about the color of your skin or whether you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter. It's about being an American and what it means to be American. It motivates us to help each other out when we're down on our luck. When we have natural disasters, we help our neighbors. It fosters the idea of patriotism. Now, you could use nationalism and exploit it for xenophobic purposes, but nationalism is a good thing. It keeps us together. You don't have nationalism, guess what you end up with? Afghanistan. How many of you want to take a trip to Afghanistan right now? Or Libya? Okay, and that's where the tribal countries. But that's what these indoctrination camps are trying to do. They're trying to make us a tribal society where we're constantly conflicting with each other. If they can't change your opinion, well, then we're going to have to conflict with each other. And I compare it, and a lot of professors don't like it. They're like, you can't compare it to the re-education camps of China. But that's what professors do. The ultimate goal is. See, in China right now, they have re-education camps. And yes, they engage in torture in these re-education camps. It's brutal. They will attack people. They'll kill people. And our college campuses are not doing that. I need to make that clear. The professors are not doing that. I need to make that clear. But the idea behind what they're doing in China is to get people to conform to a particular point of view, to support the communist system. How is that any different than what these liberal institutions are trying to do? And that's why, and that leads us to the idea of censorship. Because when students do begin to speak out, when students do begin to speak up, routinely they're being criticized, they're being punished for it. And we see it time and time again. We have teachers that give assignments. I mean, one teacher from the University of Arizona gave her students an assignment that they could either attend an anti-Trump rally, and if they support the president and don't want to attend that rally, then they could write a 10-page paper. Now, how is that fair? Well, it's not. But basically what they're looking to do is indoctrinate and censor those that support President Trump. That's what their goal is. Because they can't defeat you with the arguments. They can't defeat you with the debate. So they want to shut you up. And that's what they're trying to do on the college campuses throughout the country. And they do it by labeling everyone. Because in this day and age, especially now that you have social media, it spreads like wildfire. And so we're going to ban speakers from coming to campuses. And we're going to say that students that say things that may go against someone's beliefs, well, we're going to label that as either racist or bigoted. And we're going to punish that student. And that's going to show other students that they can't engage in that type of behavior. And where has it gone? Do you think we're better off as a society when we begin to self-censor now? Because that's what happens. You have teachers that are pushing their far-left ideology on the students, that students have limited options to push back. They could either fight with the professor every class, and their end result is they're going to get a diminished grade, or they could put their head down, go along with whatever the professor's viewpoint is, try and please the professor so they get a good grade. And do you think that's really beneficial? I mean, is that really what you're going to take out thousands of dollars in student loans for? And the answer is no. And so you have this censorship that's occurring that's diminishing our politics, but it's also falling into, so this has been on college campuses for quite some time, but since 2016 we're now seeing it become mainstream where we start to label everyone. The final one is safe spaces. Now what the hell is a safe space? What the hell is that? You know, I mean, well, you think about it, it's absolutely ridiculous. So if you look up the definition of a safe space, it's basically that nobody offends you. That anything you deem offensive, you go to your safe space and you feel safe and protected. Now, day one, when my students come into my class, I tell them, if they believe in safe spaces, drop my course. And the reason you want to drop my course is because I'm going to make it my job to insult and offend every single student I have in that classroom. And the reason I'm going to do that is to toughen them up, to give them common sense, street smarts, to understand how the real world works. I mean, as a college professor, I'm supposed to be providing them with a robust education where they go into the real world prepared. Well, the real world's nasty. There are going to be good things that happen and bad things. Sometimes life is going to suck. You can have mean bosses, you can have good bosses. And you have to be prepared to deal with it. If your boss reams you out, you can't say, I want to go to my safe space. You're never going to get a job that way. You're never going to keep a job that way. And so you have these 4 categories of ideological intolerance that exist on college campuses, and we do need to change it. But we are making strides. You need to push back. You need to speak up. Because the reason they've had success is because we've been silent. We've allowed them to silence us. They're the loudest voices in the room, but they're the minority. If more people speak up and push back against this ideological thought, you will make strides. That I can guarantee you. And that's what I hope we start doing today.
Thank you very much, Professor Giordano.